All right, so I want to jump right in and hit you with the hard question. What's the difference between a good parent and a bad parent?
Oh my gosh. That is a seriously loaded question.
It very is. It is, but I want your interpretation on that.
I don't know if there is... So I don't like the words good and bad to start with. I don't like good and bad for children, and I don't like good and bad for parents, and I don't like good and bad for teachers. Because I do believe that we do better when we know better. And I think majority of the parents, 85% or higher, are doing their best. And they're doing their best because they love their child. And if they know better, they do better. Mm-hmm. So I don't agree with this word to start with.
Totally fair.
Yeah.
So if you could differentiate between, you said parents, most of the parents are doing their best. What do you think is the biggest struggle that parents are dealing with?
I think our life pace is very hectic right now. I think there's many demands on us as just living in this fast-paced life right now. I'm a different grandmother than I was a parent. And our daughters are in their 30s, almost 40 now. So times have changed. And I think as parents, I think we just need to have some grace on ourselves and be present for our children. It's not so much that, we're trying to become perfect or compete, but I think if we can just slow the pace down and be more present, I think it will be better for our children and for ourselves.
Yeah.
I think the general well-being, the general mental well-being, instead of adding more demands and do this, don't do this, I think what we need to do is just slow down some more.
Yeah, the hard part as busy parents is trying to balance everything and spend quality time. Sure. I find myself feeling guilty being kind of pulled in multiple directions. So
Sure.
like when I'm working, I feel like I want to spend time with my kids. And then when I'm with my kids, I feel like I'm guilty because I should be working.
I know.
So how do you encourage parents to help strike that balance without that kind of guilt?
Yeah. So first of all, guilt is not a very helpful emotion. Guilt just pulls you down. It doesn't teach you anything. It just makes you feel bad about yourself. And I think the other thing is finding this balance. This really doesn't exist. So I think we should take the myth away. I really think we should just not even pretend that we can have work-life balance. And I think we might release some of the tension on us. But what I've realized with children is that it's quality, not quantity. So there's something that's called the 9-minute magic. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay, 9-minute magic is genius. Whoever invented it, I'm just borrowing it. And what I've realized about the 9-minute magic is when they first wake up in the morning, and if you have 2 kids, mom could be with one child and the dad could be with one child. Those first 3 minutes in the morning, then the 3 minutes in the afternoon when they come home from school or you've come home from work, and the last 3 minutes at night before you tuck them into bed. So that's the magic of the 9-minute that really pours into the emotional bank and into the emotional heart. And the way that looks like is it's one-on-one. That's why one parent takes one sibling, or if you have multiple children and you're trying to manage, do it one-on-one. So the first thing they wake up in the morning, being fully present and just pouring love in that little human. And with your eyes, with your heart, just pouring all the love that you can. No to-do list. Have you done this? Get up, brush your teeth, get ready for school, get your bella. Before the to-do list starts.
That's great.
Just be present and create a ritual that is a connecting ritual, right? So you're already starting the morning by pouring love in the little human, and whether it's cuddling or snuggling or just whatever that feels like for the two of you. And then the same thing in the afternoon when they come back and you haven't seen them for the day. And same thing at night. Our grandchildren call it pillow chit-chat. We love pillow chit-chat. So now I'm doing it with my grandkids. And that just basically means both the heads are on the same pillow, you're snuggled up, and you're just reflecting on the day. Something, even in the beginning, to have open questions. What was one thing that you were proud of for today? What is one thing that you struggled with today? What is one thing that brought you joy today? What is one thing that you found challenging today? Whatever the question is, it doesn't matter. The point is that you're connecting, and then you're starting the morning with a connect. So I think it's quality, not quantity. And I think we can all be present for 3 minutes at a time without feeling guilty that I'm stress thin.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's a great tip. In the evening, we have a ritual where we say what we're thankful for that day, grateful. And I feel like we have a good nighttime ritual, but in the morning, it's very different. And it's kind of like, get up, hurry up, get your clothes on kind of a thing. Yeah. And I think that's a great suggestion. Just 3 minutes. I mean, that's a huge difference.
And take turns, right? Mom does it to one person today, dad does it tomorrow, and then flip-flop. So both of them are getting for both the connects. It could even be a little ritual as you drop them off to school, right? It could be a tiny ritual, and call it that. This is our ritual, and explain to them what ritual means. I honestly feel like children are so intelligent, so capable to understand anything. And if you say to them, this is a heart ritual, what should we do in the morning that would make it even more special for you and for me? So that I'm carrying that memory in my heart that we connected this morning, and I can't wait to see you in the afternoon when you come back. And what is the one thing you'd like to do when you come home this afternoon, right? So I'm looking forward to it. And then it takes the pressure off, because then my memory remembers when that guilt comes up, that, oh, I'm not spending enough time and I should be working and I should be with my children, blah, blah, blah. Then I can remind my brain, no, we had a really good time this morning. Our hearts connected.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's good. You've helped a lot of parents and a lot of kids in the year. How long have you been doing this, by the way?
So Together We Grow has only existed for 6 years, but I've been in the field of early childhood now for 39 years. And I'm absolutely passionate about this. This is a calling to me. I'm convinced that I'm on earth to make the children feel loved and cared for. And I'm advocating for children and for any grown-ups, teachers, children, parents, like whoever's taking care of little humans. I don't know. It seems to be a gift that I seem to understand little humans a little bit better.
That's great. Well, so you've got the expertise, you've got the knowledge. With those 39 years, what has been the number one behavioral issue that you've seen that you've helped parents and teachers, because you help teachers as well, overcome?
I think the biggest thing that we all struggle with as a grown-up, me included, because I'm not perfect and I'm absolutely haven't mastered it yet. Like, it keeps continuing. I think the biggest thing that most grown-ups struggle with is children not listening.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
100%. It's like, it's, no matter what it is, whether it's cleaning up, picking something up, just doing something, a task, it's like,
it's exhausting.
It's like, I have to grab them. I have to squat down on their level and say, look at them in the eyes and say, are you listening to me? Yeah. Please do this.
Yeah. So you just said something really important, and I want to talk about the neuroscience behind it, because a lot of the work that I do connects with actually the brain and the neuroscience behind it. And so a couple of things that I want to talk about in terms of not listening, because this is also a trigger for me, right? And when I was a parent, our daughters are now in their 30s and we have grandchildren now. I'm a different grandmother than I was a mother. What do I mean by that? I was very strict as a mother. I was also a very strict classroom teacher. So when we were in Hawaii, I had 16 4-year-olds by myself. And I ran a very tight ship.
Yeah, you have to.
And I was very proud of that. Like, nobody got out of line. It was the worst class in terms of behaviors that they'd given me. And I almost put the pressure on myself that I had to be successful in this. So I was very strict as a mother. I had zero patience when I came home. All my patience was left in the classroom. Teachers will understand this. Teachers who are mothers will understand what I'm talking about. Teachers make the worst mothers because we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And we leave the patients in the classrooms and we have zero when we come home for our children. It's a thing. It's a thing. And so starting off, I didn't have any strategies. So you only do what you can for coping skills. And compliance and command and demand was the way to go. So when I spoke, I expected obedience and I expected things to get done. So when I'm speaking, that's what needs to happen. If I could go back and tell my younger self, I wouldn't put so much pressure on myself. I would ease up and I would slow down and I would connect with them more. I didn't know that then.
When you say put pressure on yourself, more in terms of how strict you felt you were, or how you felt during that time, the stress that feeling like you needed to be strict in order to get these kids to do what you wanted them to do.
Yeah, because it was such a big responsibility, right? I'm raising kids and they need to be respectful and they need to follow instructions and they need to have good manners and they need to behave and it's a reflection on me and, I got to fix this. This is my job and like we have to be on it and they can't slide. Like, all of this, fast forward now, 39 years later, I didn't know about the brain back then. Mm-hmm. And so one, I would have grace on myself, which is why I started with that conversation. And the second I would say is, in the big scheme of things, it wouldn't matter what the memories you're building is more going to be impactful than they didn't clean up or they did clean up or you spend the entire day cleaning the kitchen or picking up the bedroom. In the big scheme of things, what the children are going to grow up is with the memories that you've built. Memories come from experiences, not to-do list.
Right.
So that would be one thing. So going back to your question about listening, in general, this is research that grown-ups command and demand way too many demands on kids. I even read a research the other day, which was fascinating to me. 27 commands are given per minute on average.
Wow.
Think about that.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't
do it. Yeah, right? And then if children are acting out, they double. Mm. So think about that. 27 commands and demands are being thrown at kids. No wonder they're not listening, right? They're just exhausted. The second thing that's happening is, so one is too much command and demand. The second is that we're not connecting, we're just correcting. And this has become really the work that I'm doing now. The more you connect, the less you correct. So what does connecting sound like? Ask and then tell. Instead of just telling. Pick it up the clothes and get changed. Instead of just telling, ask. So just ask. I'm noticing that your bedroom is a hot mess. What happened? Like, what's going on?
Oh, so you're not asking them to do something. You're just kind of asking about the situation in general. Okay.
Yeah. Or you're fighting with your sibling or you're throwing something or you're whining or whatever it is. Ask, what happened? What's going on? And then you can tell them, I understand you're not ready to finish playing. I understand you don't want to eat dinner or you don't like the dinner, whatever it is. Ask and then tell helps you to give them a voice. And so we're switching the gears instead of just command. We're pausing and asking and connecting. So that's a big change. So in terms of children listening, so, our daughters were really good girls, well-behaved. They didn't give us much trouble, although the teenage years were a bit rough. But okay, we survived, right? So the grandkids, I'm noticing that they don't listen as much as their mothers used to listen. And so now I've learned these 3 tricks to help the grandchildren learn this whole listening thing, because what I realized about myself was I get triggered when they don't listen.
Same here.
You're right.
I think a lot of parents do.
Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be the mean grandma. I don't want to be the one yelling at you.
Yeah, you're like, I already did that.
Right? I don't want to do that. I want to have a relationship that you love to come and see me. I want to have a relationship that you look forward to come and seeing me, not that you get yelled at my house, right? So I had to change me. And the 3 things that I came up with that was genius, that I was like, oh my God, this has made a difference. The first one was teaching them the vocabulary of being ignored. So we're sitting at a dining table and one of our granddaughters is sitting on the other side of the dining table and I'm telling her to finish her dinner and she's obviously not listening and ignoring and I'm getting triggered. And I'm like, okay, we're not doing this anymore. We are not doing this anymore. And my daughter was standing right there. And so I just turned around like this. So in between, I'm talking to Ava and then she's not listening to me. I'm getting triggered. So I was just like, oh, so I turned my back around. And at some point she realized that I wasn't paying attention to her. So she got up over here and she's like, Ami. And so I turned around and I looked at her. She was about 3.5 at the time. She's 11 now. So we've done this for a few years. We've kind of been practicing this. And so I look at her and I said, Ava, you were talking to me and I ignored you. I turned my back to you. I was ignoring you. How did that make you feel? And she said, that was yucky. I said, exactly. That's how I feel when I'm talking to you. You ignore me. And now you know what that feels like. We're not going to do that. When you talk, I'm going to listen. When I talk, you're going to listen.
Is that something that you felt like you've had to constantly do to get to remind them?
Yes. Yeah. In the beginning, yes. Now, with except for the little one, because she's 21 months, the others are 11, 6, and 4. I had to do this with all of them because the first one is your trial child. You try all these things out.
You experiment.
Right? So I tried it with Ava and I perfected it with her. So I said it a few times to remind her brain what that was. So I used the vocabulary of ignoring. Now we have done life together for 11 years. Now she knows that when I say the word, so if I find myself repeating something 3 times, that's my limit. I can feel my blood pressure rising. I can feel myself getting all tense. And now all I have to say is, Ava, I'm feeling ignored. That's my cue to my brain that I'm reaching the threshold. And it's a cue for her that something needs to change. And then now her response is, I'm listening. Right? So we've learned to do life better because I don't want to stress her out. So I have to have a coping skill to manage my trigger.
That's great.
I mean, that's on me, right? I'm getting triggered.
Yeah, expressing how you feel too, something they teach in therapy,
Yes.
couples, they say, I feel this way, right?
Yeah.
And expressing it to your child would be no different. But,
yeah.
But how are you able to check yourself? Because it's really easy after a busy, stressful day to just react.
Yeah. So this is the work where I think I have done the most work on myself yet. Haven't mastered it yet. Identifying my triggers. I need to know my triggers before I can have a plan.
Everything feels like a trigger to me. So tell me yours. I'm interested.
Oh, I have so many triggers. I'm a work in progress. I have so many triggers, but not listening is one of them. So I know this about me, that I'm going to get irritated if somebody's not listening, right? It comes from that deep compliance conditioning. So it was deep ingrained in my DNA. So if somebody's not listening, I'm going to get triggered. So I have a game plan for that. I'm feeling ignored, right? So I can address it because I know that's going to trigger me. The other one is, so let me finish with the 3 strategies because I have really spent a lot of time working on this because it's such a big trigger. So the first one is labeling the emotion and bringing it to life for children and explaining. So maybe it's not ignoring for you, maybe it's disrespectful for you, whatever the word is, to bring it to life for the children. Ignoring is what I felt. So I shared that, right?
So you don't necessarily have to ignore them back. You just have to express how you're feeling.
Well, I want them to know what the emotion of ignoring feels like.
I see.
And most humans will not like the emotion of ignoring. So once I can understand it, maybe I can change it. Because when children are doing it, I think sometimes they literally just go on another planet.
Right.
I'm convinced. They just go to a different planet. I don't know which planet it is. Yeah. It's a kid's planet.
Imagination land.
Right?
Yeah.
So sometimes they're not just ignoring us, but they just have checked out. Because of our command and demand, they've just checked out. Or they're in a zone and they're playing, so they're not on purpose ignoring us. But if you're feeling triggered, you got to do something about it, right? But not when you're triggered. The calm conversation has to happen when you're in your calm brain. You can't, like seriously, we have 3 parts to the brain, right? Survival, emotional, and learning and calm, right? I have to be in this brain so I can connect with them. If I am frustrated, irritated, upset, angry, disappointed, ignored, I'm here. Or I'm feeling insecure, self-conscious, nervous, anxious, I'm here. I can't do their brain work and my brain work if I'm not in my calm brain. It doesn't work, right? So one is bringing the emotion to life. The second one is literally going up to them, which is what you were talking about earlier. And the brain science behind that is that maybe the audio has checked out, but maybe I need to use the other senses. So when I walk over, if I'm feeling ignored or triggered, I'm going to put my hands on the shoulders. I'm going to make eye contact. So I'm using 3 senses. I'm speaking, I'm touching, and I'm sight. I'm engaging 3 senses and the brain can be engaged. So that's the brain science behind it, because if the listening is not working, lean into some of the other senses to reconnect.
I find that works. That's great. I didn't know.
Yeah, that's why I said you were onto something when you said that. That's the brain science behind it. And the third one is the joy juice. Have you heard of the joy?
No, this sounds delicious.
The joy juice. So, but recognizing that as human beings, when hearts connect and eyes connect, there's the happy hormones that flow. What we forget as grown-ups is that most of the time we're at 5-6 feet over here, and the children are down here. And if all day long they're hearing conversations coming at this level, there's no joy juice. So you have to get down on their level so the eyes can connect and the hearts can connect, and that's when the magic happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yelling across the room is not magical and it's not connecting. It's only correcting.
Right.
The more you connect, the less you correct. And if you're focusing on correcting, you're missing the opportunity to connect. And this is why we're spiraling as grown-ups. Nobody listens. I'm not even connected to you.
Right.
How can I
expect you to listen?
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
My emotional bank is empty. You haven't deposited any in my emotional bank and you're trying to make a withdrawal.
Mm-hmm.
Withdrawal means you want compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Withdrawal means you want me to follow your instructions. Withdrawal means that, but you haven't put any in, you can't get any out.
Right. Once you if there's something that happens that's not one of your triggers, how are you able to bring it from here to here, as you said earlier?
So I have acronyms. I'm getting very old in life.
Yeah.
All I know is acronyms now.
Yeah.
To remind my brain in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
Because that's really where it goes pear-shaped,
For
right?
sure, yeah.
It's just disaster. SBA. Stop, breathe, and anchor yourself before you say or do anything. This is absolutely the hardest work that you will do as a grown-up. Stop, breathe, and anchor yourself. Let me tell you the brain science behind it. What the neuroscience is telling us is 90 seconds of a pause can shift my brain state.
So just stopping.
Okay. 3 deep breaths. 3 deep breaths is 90 seconds. Think about that. I'm here or I'm here. I'm either nervous, anxious, or I'm frustrated, irritated, whatever it is, I'm experiencing something. To go from here to here to here, 90 seconds pause, SBA. So this is how I do it in the moment. If I'm seeing myself getting worked up, I'll just say, Prerna, stop, breathe, count backwards from 10 to 1. Because going from 10 to 1, my brain has to be engaged. I can't do it on autopilot. Maybe some people can, but I can't. So I have to go 10 to 1. Already my brain is here because I'm having to think 10 to 1. Mm-hmm. The other thing I do is be present where your feet are. So if I'm in a classroom with a loud, chaotic, noisy space, noise is another thing that's my trigger. Very noisy, chaotic rooms, I'm just I can take it. Mm-hmm. So I literally have to be wiggle your toes in your shoes, be present where you are, be fully present. Before I say or do anything, I've had to work on this. I have not mastered any of this. I'm telling you, I'm totally honest. I haven't mastered. It's a work in progress, but it's a strategy that I can use.
Yeah, I think only a yogi or a stoic, a sage would be able to say they mastered it. I don't think any human can.
I don't want to be perfect, right? Yeah. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to be better than I was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful, though. I mean, just stopping to be able to take those breaths, and you're not doing anything special. Can we do this without counting? Just breathing in.
Whatever your strategy is, you come up with the SBA that works for you. I do counting because it engages my brain. I take 3 deep breaths because I want 90 seconds pause. I wiggle my toes, pinch yourself, do something to bring yourself back. Mm-hmm. The science behind this is that you're not reacting, you're responding. Mm-hmm. And the game changer is there's a pause. Reaction is I see something, I hear something, I say something, mm-hmm. I do something. That's reaction, right? It's instant, it's impulse. And what you're doing to your brain is instead of reacting, you're responding. And all that means is you're just giving your brain a tiny break before the first thing comes out.
That makes sense. And similar in this line, my daughter Ellie, she's 7, and she's at the age where she's starting to push back. She's defying authority more than she used to.
Isn't it coming so fast?
It's coming quickly.
Yes.
So how can you enforce? Because rules have to be enforced, and this might be the way to do it. The way you getting down to their level and expressing knowing your triggers. But how can you enforce rules without being authoritarian and creating a
Give
power
me an
struggle?
example of a rule that you would like followed, and let's unpack that.
Homework or practicing piano?
Okay. So I would have a conversation about that. I wouldn't just come from command and demand. Mm-hmm. I would have a conversation with it. Why do you think you need homework? Mm. What do you think is the purpose of this? Let's just take homework for a minute. Piano can be thrown in the same thing. Why do you think you need this? What is the purpose of this? How does that make you feel? when you have to do it. So what I'm doing is I'm having that child process the reasoning behind it. And the second is how does that make you feel? Okay, so if she says it's important, or whether I have to help her get there, that it's important, we're going to get to the point, why is homework important? It's mastering a skill, it's practice, it's good for your brain, blah, 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 right? I'm going to help her get there if she can't give me those answers. But I want to listen to her first. Why does she think it's important? Or maybe she thinks it's a waste of time, right? But I want to hear that. And the second is, how does that make you feel? Okay, so I feel like, I'm too tired, I can't be bothered, it's just a waste of time, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what can we do so you don't feel that? How can we set this up? So I'll give her some control, right? Giving choices is voices. So when you come back from school, how would you like to do it so you can still have the time to do your homework, because we've agreed that it's good for you to practice. Your brain needs practice.
So you're giving her a sense of control as well, while it's like a compromise, essentially.
Yeah. It's not a compromise. So let's talk about that. It's not a compromise. So I would give a choice, a real choice. So sometimes grown-ups give a choice and it's not really a choice. Right? It's a fake choice.
Yeah.
A choice where a child can choose A or B. So it's not voluntold. The brain shuts down when you keep telling me to do stuff. I'm not even engaged in problem solving, and I don't even care why it's good for me, because I didn't never use my brain to figure it out. Somebody just told me to do it. I don't like it. I'm going to give you a pushback, right? So I'm going to have a conversation, and then we're going to come up with choices. So you have a choice. When you come back from school, you can have some playtime, or you could have some alone time. Which would you choose? And then the homework can happen. So help you make your schedule. But the choice is real. So really, if she says, I'd rather play by myself, or I want to play with my friend, or I want to be in the backyard, that's a real choice, that you have 30 minutes to do just that because you chose that. Then it can't be like, come and do your homework, but I have to then honor it.
Right.
So the real choice is that you can live with. Don't give a choice that you can't live with.
Okay.
Like, give a real choice, give her some control, and this is not a compromise, that she really has some choice. But then also the understanding is that you can choose one of these things, but then the homework has to get done in 30 minutes. And if you need a break after 30 minutes to go stretch, brain break, jump up and down, and come back to it to finish it, that's okay.
Okay.
Right? Like, I understand that we can't stick with a task for long enough. We get tired, and they're little.
Right. Yeah.
So giving her some control over it, giving her choices, real choices that could be selected. So that way, it would help to make her feel like she's got a skin in the game.
That's helpful. That's really helpful. Because we've got a schedule written out, but I think that's...
But maybe the schedule could be with her input.
Yeah, I think that's
Would you like to change the schedule?
Yeah.
I mean, these are things that we have to get done. We have to get homework done. We have to take a bath. We have to have dinner. We have blah, blah, blah. Like, whatever has to happen.
Right.
Which order would you like to do it?
No, I think that's great. I think it also reinforces the independence, because the more independent I can get her, we can get your kid to be able to do these things on their own. Because if they're doing it out of their own volition, and it'll make them feel confident, it'll help them want to do it and become more independent.
And the brain science behind that is autonomy over learning, autonomy over my body. I'm not being forced. And there's grown-ups around me that are respecting me. And then I can respect myself, and self-esteem, confidence, but also problem solving and critical thinking, right? So this is not working. What should we do to change it? The current schedule is not working. What are your ideas? How would you like to set it up?
Right. Treat them like an adult, essentially. Right.
So it's not really saying you're on your own, but we're helping you to engage your brain, because your brain is capable and intelligent, and it can problem solve. And I promise you, kids have the best solutions for their own problems.
That's great. Really helpful for me, and for probably a lot of your parents too. Another one that's an issue with a lot of parents, because I talked to a number of parents before this, and what's the best way to calm a child during a tantrum? And how do we help them manage these big emotions? Luke is notorious for this. He's gotten better, but what's your suggestion?
So tantrums are normal. And when you're little, you really don't know how to process big emotions, right? So based on what they do. But I have a question for you. I'm guessing Lucas is your son. I have a question for you. When Lucas is throwing a tantrum, when he gets his way, is he smiles and it gets over like that? Or is it one of those tantrums that he's very dysregulated and it takes him time to calm himself down and get regulated? Or is it a mix?
It's kind of a mix. It's a very strong reaction to something that he's always been like that too. Yeah. Like if we told him like he couldn't get candy, I remember having a video of us like when he was this big, we were Beauty and the Beast theme Halloween. It was like 4 years ago, and we said, "No, Luke, we got to eat dinner before we have a candy," and we got him on camera going. And I'm like, Ellie would have never done that. So it's just, it's definitely baked in. Right. So he has these very strong reactions and he needs to sometimes physically lash out. So for example, and this kind of lines in with another question, but another boy was in his face a couple weeks ago and he wanted the kid to get out of his face. And so he ended up biting him at school. And so, how do we prevent those emotions from coming on right away and getting them to question those things before they react?
Yeah, so a couple of things are happening, right? They haven't mastered self-control yet. They haven't mastered self-regulation yet. Many grown-ups haven't either, right? So there's that, recognizing that they haven't mastered this part of the brain yet. But what do you do in the moment? So the reason I asked you was if the tantrum is over the minute he gets what he wants, or whether he's completely dysregulated is because there's two different types of tantrums.
He does calm down relatively quickly, but we don't give. I guess when you ask when he gets what he wants, we don't usually give in to the tantrum. So I don't know if he does get what he wants. if that's an answer to your question.
Okay, so maybe I'll just use an example as having the candy before dinner. And if the tantrum was being thrown, I want candy, and I get the candy, and then I'm like, oh, thank you, and it turns off like that, is what I'm trying to kind of help people understand, that there's two types of tantrums. Even that is helpful, right? There's two types of tantrums. The first one is an upstairs brain tantrum, where it's manipulative, where I want something, and I want it now, and if I don't get it, I'm going to throw the biggest fit, and this grown-up is going to give in because they've learned that strategy. Some children have learned the strategy and they've mastered the strategy. I'm going to throw the biggest fit. I'm going to scream. I'm going to yell. I'm going to do whatever triggers the grown-up because they have learned our triggers. And so they do that to push our buttons to get what they want. But the minute they get it, they turn it off like that. So and the second one is they're really emotionally distraught. And they can't gather themselves and they don't know how to do it. So the strategies for two are different because one is downstairs tantrum, one is upstairs tantrum, and the strategies are different.
Okay.
So the strategy for an upstairs tantrum, you have to hold boundaries, you have to be consistent, you have to be firm, and the language you can use is, I understand you want the candy. So it doesn't hurt to understand. I'm acknowledging and I'm validating, but I'm not giving in. So I'm treating that tantrum as a billboard. Imagine you're driving on the highway and you see a billboard. Your car is moving and you see the billboard. Oh, they have a sale going on. Your car keeps moving. You don't park the car. You don't get out of the car. You don't stand at the front of the billboard and say, there's a sale going on. You'd get run over, right? We don't do that on the highway. A tantrum is a billboard. It's announcing something. So you acknowledge it. Acknowledging and validating doesn't mean you're giving in. You want the candy. I understand. I hear you. I understand you want it. It's not a choice right now. I understand you're upset, but you can handle this. I understand, right? So I'm just going to keep repeating, not going to give in. And when the tantrum is over, we're going to talk about it. Why do you think I said no? Like during the tantrum, they're not here. They're not listening. They're not hearing. They're here or here. Save your breath. Just save your breath. And I, at this time, you could also use the 5 sentences of, I see you're really upset. So I could label what I'm seeing. I see your legs are kicking right now. I hear your loud screaming voice. I hear you really want this. I might say these things just to remain in my calm brain. So I'm seeing, I'm hearing. I notice you're not ready to finish playing, right? I see, I hear, I notice. I understand is absolutely magical. And the last one is I wonder. I wonder if all of this is happening because you're just tired right now. I wonder if you're disappointed. I wonder what else is going on. The minute you start wondering, your brain shifts from head to heart, Because the head doesn't know how to wonder. Head wants concrete, yes, no, do it, don't do it. The head wants very concrete boundaries, but the heart wonders. So the minute you're even saying, I wonder, you're already trying to become human and connecting instead of being in the head, like do it like right now.
Right.
Like the voice is raising. I'm going to control you with my voice. I'm going to control you with my stance. Yes, of course, grown-ups have lots of ways to control kids, right? So this is the strategy for the upstairs tantrum. Don't give in, be consistent, be firm, but be kind, right? I have another acronym if you're up for acronyms.
For sure. Yeah, this helps.
My old brain can only remember acronyms. KLFF.
KLFF.
KLFF. Be kind, be loving, but be firm and be fair. Children understand fairness. If one gets away and does it, the other one doesn't, disaster.
Yeah.
Firm is your confident, assertive voice, not a mean voice. Just, I understand. Yeah. That's a billboard. I'm going to tell my brain. I'm not going to say it out loud. I'm going to be telling my, yeah, there's a billboard. I see it. Right? Just so that I'm remaining calm. Because if I remind my brain that tantrum is a billboard, right? I'm seeing the billboard. Yep. I acknowledge you. I validate you. And yes, you will handle it. We'll write this out. The message I'm giving to the children is, you can do better and I can do better. We haven't mastered it yet. And we're work in progress. Right? So it's not instant. It's going to take some time. The other one is different. When they're completely distraught, right? They're absolutely beside themselves. They can't gather themselves. And some children flip here very easily. Some children who've had, many insecurities, trauma, whatever the reason might be, this is where they go. Fear, anxiety, nervousness, all of these go down. And for those children, it's different. I would say, would you like me to hold you? Do you need a hug? Sometimes even for the upstairs tantrum, just saying, would you like a hug right now? Mm-hmm. Like I saw my granddaughter the other day. She was crying so loudly. And my daughter and I was just like, oh my God, this is piercing the ears. This is too much. And my daughter was saying, you need to go to the other room. If you want to cry, you need to cry over there because you're giving me a headache. And I just said to her, I said, would you just like a hug right now? And she said, uh-huh. And all of that drama was because I'm beside myself. I don't know what to do. You grown up. Can you regulate me right now? Because I'm losing it. And so we gave a big bear hug. Her stress came down. And then we talked about it. Okay, what happened? What was that all about? I didn't like it the way mommy spoke to me. Okay, let's talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So whatever it is, it's a family. We're figuring it out together. And I think the best thing grown-ups can do is be vulnerable and be honest and just say what you're not good at.
Yeah, and the tantrums you're talking about down there are the ones that seem more irrational. Is that how you can differentiate between the two?
Yeah, that when they get their way, they're not coming down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. It's like, you wanted the toy, now you got the toy and you're still crying.
Right.
Because it wasn't about the toy.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So you've helped me a lot with my 5 and 7-year-old. I want to hopefully help newer parents, talk about issues that I think affect a lot of parents. The big one is new parents and sleep training kids. So there's lots of philosophies out there, and I want to get your take on what the best way to do it. Ours seem to work really well, and our kids sleep extremely well, and they don't come out and bother us. And they're very different than what a lot of other parents do. So our kids from the get-go were sleeping in their rooms as soon as possible. We didn't sleep with them. This is my personal belief that you're not helping them, doing them any favors by having them sleep with you. I had that happen to me. I slept with my parents. I was insecure with sleeping. I had to sleep on my sister's floors. I had to sleep on my parents' floors. Sleeping was a big issue all throughout my youth because of that. And so when Ellie and Luke were getting sleep trained and were at the age where they could self-soothe, we were like, you are sleeping by yourself, and no matter what, this is happening. And because of that, they sleep throughout the entire night. They wake up. If they wake up and have a bad dream, they self-soothe. Or if it's a bad dream, they come in and they say, I had a bad dream. I'm like, okay, are you okay now? Do you want some water? And then they go back to their room on their own. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on sleep training in the early age from the 0 to 3?
Birth, yeah.
Yeah.
So even in terms of vocabulary, I'm definitely going to encourage everybody to go with birth to 3, birth to 1, birth to 2, because when they're born, they're somebody. So 0 is nothing. 0 is not a human. We're going to go with birth.
Okay.
So birth to 2, birth to 3, birth to 18 months or whatever. So I agree with you. We did the same thing with our daughters. They're older now, and they slept really well, and sleep was not an issue. So when the grandkids came, I was so shocked. I'm like, what is this problem with the sleeping? I don't understand. What is the deal with the sleeping? And then they kept telling me, but it's a thing, Mom. It's a thing. 14-month and 12-month. I'm like, oh my God, it's a thing. Like, nobody's sleeping. You're tired. They're tired. Everybody's tired. So yes, I think children do learn good, healthy sleeping habits when they can be left alone, because sometimes when they're in the room with the parents, the sleep is disturbed. Mm-hmm. So people may disagree, and I'm completely okay with that. You do what makes sense for your family, right? We're not telling anybody to do a certain way. Everybody has to make their own choices. But I think when they're very little, under 1, like 6, 7 months old, like tiny, tiny babies, and they haven't learned the coping skills to self-soothe, they need a grown-up to come to reassure them that they're not abandoned. Mm-hmm. Because then you could have really security issues for the rest of your life, because the survival brain gets wired birth to 18 months. And so if I'm leaving you crying for endless hours because I'm forcing you to regulate and you haven't mastered that skill yet,
right,
you're going to have further trauma.
That makes complete sense
Right.
at that younger age. But what about the exact opposite, where parents are sleeping in the bed with their kids? And because we never did that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who argue against it say, oh, your kids are going to have trauma, they're going to be cold, they're not going to be emotional. But our kids give us hugs all the time. There's lots of love, and they never had us in the bed with them while they slept.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You're not going to traumatize your kids if they don't sleep with you. Right? Having confidence in your parenting style, because you're going to deposit in the emotional bank throughout the day. Mm-hmm. Sleeping is not the time that you're depositing, is probably going to be giving you not a good sleep.
Right. It's actually,
and then you wake up tired and irritated. And I'd rather you wake up calm and rested, so you're present for them, because the children will get their sleep regardless. Children, you know what I mean? Like, once they fall asleep, they'll be across your bodies, because we've had grandkids now. The little one, when she comes for sleepover, she won't sleep in the crib. So I've told my daughter, and I'm like, I'm coming to your house where she can sleep in her crib. I don't mind play dates, but we're not doing sleepovers yet, because it's a new bed, it's a new room, and she's not comfortable. So I'm like, I'm not going to do this to her. Mm-hmm. Just because I want to have a play date with her. Right. So I'll come to you where she's familiar with her routine. So yeah, there's something to be said for children who get good night's sleep and the parents who get good night's sleep. You're not going to harm your children if they're not sleeping with you. And it's more what you do the rest of the day. So at night you're sleeping, but then the rest of the day you're correcting. That's more damage, right? Than sleeping and then connecting with them and being available for them emotionally and physically and mentally, because you're rested.
At what age is that sleep training okay to be done with? Like, okay, I can leave my child to cry.
So it's so hard with these ages and dates, right? So our younger daughter did sleep training with her children, and I want to say they were around a year or just around
that's around
that,
what it was for us,
right?
as well.
It was around that time,
yeah.
And it worked beautifully. And now they're both sleeping in their own room. They have a bunk bed, like all is sorted out.
Yeah. I think people need to understand that. This is why I don't agree. I think I agree with sleep training, is that that is how they're going to build their confidence and be able to feel strong and confident that, hey, I don't need somebody in the room for me to fall asleep and sleep well.
Yeah. I mean, sleep is hard, right? Sleep is really a thing, because it could be scary. It could be a little bit nerve-wracking, because I'm transitioning in, and it could be, the dark room, this, that. So do whatever makes them feel safe and comfortable and confident, whether that is a night light, a hall light, a soothing music that you turn off, like whatever you need to do to reassure them that they're safe. But also, I think sometimes when they become toddlers and 3 years old, it becomes it becomes attention seeking. Mm-hmm. Right? So if I just read me one more story, snuggle with me one more time, like 5 minutes, not ready yet, right? It becomes attention seeking.
Right.
And what do we know about attention seeking? It's a relationship need. So I'm doing attention seeking behavior to engage with you. And now I've learned that if I stretch the rubber band for the sleep time, instead of going to bed at 8, it's now 8:45. I'm just milking this.
Right.
And what is that? That's relationship seeking. So heavy on the relationship during the day, but having a firm good night routine, a good night ritual, having a morning ritual, but include them in it. So what would make sense? Would we read one story each and then we're done? Would we read one story snuggled in our bed and I'll lie with you and have a pillow chit chat and then I'm done? Right? That's the boundaries. That's where the firmness comes in.
Right.
Or, you're going to brush your teeth, blah, blah. Like whatever the routine is, include them in it.
That's great. Do we have time to do cover one more? All right, great. I want to talk about screen time. My wife and I are really strict when it comes to screen time and technology. And I want to read a couple just stats that I found, and I want your feedback on it. But children under 5 who engage in more than 2 hours of screen time per day are 7 times more likely to show signs of attention deficit by age 7. And by the way, these are stats that I learned after we decided to do it. We just didn't feel like there was any benefit to having them in front of the screen. We watch on the weekends, they have an hour in the morning to watch TV. And then my wife's definitely the better enforcer than I am, for sure. And it's because it's super easy. It's like you have a babysitter right there with the TV, right? So it's really hard to be able to regulate it. But another one is language development. For infants, every hour of daily screen time is linked to a 16% higher chance of developing expressive speech delays. And then the physical health.
Staggering, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. Obesity risks for us kids who spend more than 3 hours per day in front of the screens have a 30% increased chance of developing obesity, and then sleep disruption as well because of that. And then emotional and social effects. A recent study found that children who spend more than 3 hours per day on screens are more likely to report higher levels of anxiety and depression in particular. 42% of children aged 6 to 12 who use screens for extended periods exhibited emotional regulation difficulties. And social skills. I mean, there's a whole list. So what are your thoughts on that? And is this a big reason why there has been an increase in the development of anxiety and depression in kids?
So let's go for the brain science behind this. What is the device doing to the brain? Before I share one way or the other, because it's not my opinion that matters. It's what is the research telling us about the brain, the impact of the device. You have some pretty horrific stats that you just read, right? So what is it doing to the brain? When the device is there, it's numbing the brain. That's in essence what's happening. It's not activating the brain. And if you're going to tell me I have educational apps, you're lying to yourself. It's just flat out lying to yourself.
Really?
Yes. It doesn't engage the brain. Why? Because birth to 5, birth to 8, the way the brain is engaged by experience, by actually making neural connections. How do neural connections happen? There's a nerve that runs from your index finger and your thumb, and it goes up your arm and right behind your eyes and in between your ears and behind this part of the brain where you're mastering your executive function skills. Executive function skills are life skills. Problem solving, critical thinking, creative thinking, empathy, compassion, you name it, all is getting mastered right here. The device is not activating the neurons.
Even when you're, say, coloring or doing like math problems on the device?
Yeah. So yes and no when they're very little. So I'm talking about birth to 5.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Children experience by doing. When it's processed through my senses, my brain can engage. Mm-hmm. So for example, if I touch something, I smell something, I see something, I hear something, that's 4 senses that have activated my neurons. Mm-hmm. And why is it activating the brain? Because I hear from one part, see from another part, smell from another part. So when I'm engaging my senses, my neurons are firing together.
Which is why little kids like to put stuff in their mouths.
Exactly. So neurons that fire together, wire together. And when you're creating wires, it's going to create pathways for the rest of your life. The device doesn't do that. Device is one sense of sight. And especially when they have sounds coming at you and the colors are changing and all of this input is happening, you're kind of a glaze. And yes, maybe you're doing math and maybe you're doing something, but you're not activating your brain. It's in essence numbing it. It's an overload.
Sensory overload.
So, but if you want to use a device, doing it with a grown-up to make it an engaged, interactive, be more powerful. So if you're using an educational app, which I would avoid, just give them something for real to do. Mm-hmm. Building with Legos and puzzles is so much more impactful than doing a puzzle on an iPad. Mm-hmm. It doesn't do the same to the brain. So that's the first thing. that it numbs the brain and it's just an overload, sensory overload. So it just makes it, I've seen kids in the plane. I've been flying so much for work recently. I'm paying attention all around. The kids have this device and they're just not even there. So the opposite happens because some of your stats said that tantrums and anxiety and emotional outbursts, think of it like this. It's a drug. Would you knowingly give your children a drug?
Right.
You would not. But yet, we're giving them a device which is the same hormone release in the brain as a drug. So when the device is taken away, I can't handle it. I have a meltdown. Mm-hmm. I'll give you my own grandson. So I have a 4-year-old grandson. And my daughter was having the hardest time with him because she would negotiate, she would talk, and she'd like, okay, one show. They were very into Peppa Pig. And they were watching Peppa Pig, and then there was this whole negotiation, just one. And then the TV goes off, just one. He would agree to it. Yes, Mama, just one. And then guess what would happen? He would have a complete meltdown. He couldn't handle himself. And my daughter said, you know what? I'm just not going to do it anymore because it's not worth the stress afterwards to fight the battle. And so now they're doing what you're doing on a weekend, 1 hour in the morning. So I don't have to fight it during the week. Why am I going to stress you out and stress myself out? And also I think of what else could the children be doing?
Right. That's the other thing. The development that is so critical at that young age. It's like from coping mechanisms to skill sets to social interactions that they could be using during that time.
But even think about imagination. Even think about open-ended play. The device is taking away the opportunity to getting the kids to feel bored. Mm-hmm. Boredom is where the brain thinks of things to do. I'm not giving you a chance to just sit with yourself. So, I think putting your family on a media diet is a good thing. I wanted to circle back with the addiction thing. Would we all admit that as grown-ups, we're all addicted to our devices?
Absolutely. It's just as bad. I've set limits. The screen time on the iPhone, my wife has a password that she put in. I don't know it because I have to limit myself to social media because I'm posting for this podcast and stuff like that. I have to just do it and be done with it.
So I'm doing the same for myself. Now I'm holding myself accountable because I heard a research the other day, which was staggering to me. I'm like, oh my God, this is what is happening. Multitasking. So what they said was, when you're multitasking, you're burning brain cells. I am the queen of multitasking. I get totally challenged.
I try to do it. I just suck at it.
Right? No, I am the queen. I'm really good at it.
Carla, my wife's really good at it too.
Well, I think it's a women thing. My husband is always like, I can only do one thing at a time. I'm like, what's wrong with you? I can do 10. What's wrong with you?
Conversation
So it's a thing. Women are proud of this. I was the queen of it. I was so proud of multitasking, and I would actually get irritated with my husband because he said, I'm doing this one thing. I'm like, so here's the science behind that, which actually shocked me. So here's what's happening in your brain. When you are focused on this task and this ding bing happens on your phone because, the alert comes or something, and we are programmed to looking, you're actually burning brain cells. And now the brain cells is linked to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and dementia in old age. Think about that. The more brain cells you burn, the more likely you might be having these 3 diseases when you get older. I'm now closer to 60. I'm going to be 60 next year. So I'm paying attention to this now because in my 30s and 40s, it was very far away. But now I'm like, no. So now this is what I've done because I'm a work in progress, haven't mastered anything yet. So now I've taken out the notifications for my social media on my phone.
Same, yeah.
Because now when I think about it, I'll get to it.
I've done that with emails as well.
Right.
I was like, emails are important, but I was like, no, you can just check them at a given time.
I've done the same thing as well. And my work is like yours. I'm posting on social, like this is the thing that I do. So now I have put away the notifications. That already made a big difference. The other thing I'm doing is when I'm at a task, I'm allowing my brain to be fully engaged and put the phone in the other room. Because I'm too lazy to go walk over there to get it. And when I finish this task, I tell my brain, because I have to talk to my brain all the time, when I finish this task, you can get your phone. You'll be fine. Everything can wait. I just literally have to calm myself down. What if something important? Everything is fine. Like self-talk is what I've realized is so needed for our brains. So as a generation, grown-ups, we are addicted to the devices. This is our grown brain. The children's brain hasn't developed yet. So giving them this device is actually going to, what they say about the neurons, use it or lose it. So if I'm not going to engage all the brain cells and all the neurons are not going to make connections, they're in essence going to die off. So I am actually stealing opportunities of my children to help them engage their full brain. So if I think of it like that, then I'm actually doing them a disservice. But I understand if you need to make dinner. I think of my daughters, right? Or there's my son-in-laws, right? If somebody has to do a task, it feels so easy to put a device on to quick babysit. So again, have grace on yourself. If you need to do it for that emergency, do it. Don't feel guilty, because guilty is not a good emotion.
But crayons work just as well.
Crayons work just as well. And even, having them put masking tape and taking stuff off, like coming up with whatever.
Yeah, give them a roll of masking tape and say, go for it.
Right? Yeah. Like even having a basket of knickknacks in the kitchen, masking tape, measuring tape, some markers, some hole punch, some paper, some tools from the kitchen. How do you think this works? How does the garlic press work? Figure it out. Do you want some Play-Doh to figure out your garlic press? Like whatever it is, right? That's going to engage the brain more than you can have a device, because I'm doing you an injustice. And I don't want to do an injustice to our children. It is not helpful. And all of the stats that you read is really shocking. But the truth is, this is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
We're going to live with that. I mean, I'm telling you, my grandkids are growing up with it. And Emma, who is 21 months old, she has learned how to command Google now. Google, stop it. Google, play this.
Well, and so there's a quick question and one more thing, and then we can wrap it up. But I wanted to talk about the use of technology, right, to your advantage. As adults, it's really hard to know how to use technology in the best way without it overcoming our lives, right? So, for example, a really useful tool that you might like, I swear I plug these guys more, they should pay me for the subscription, I pay them, called Opus Clips. And essentially it's an AI clip generator. Oh, yeah. And so you have your content that you can upload. It chooses the content based on what you're saying and the virality of the content, and it turns it into short form, and then it puts subtitles on there, and then you can link it with your social media accounts and then schedule it for the week. So on Mondays is my only real day on social media. I schedule all my social media there, and then my posts are scheduled for the entire week.
We're going to have to talk more about that after the show.
So there's one way in which we can use technology to our advantage. But when kids, as they grow, they're going to be in a world with technology around it. So how do you strike a balance between being able to use technology? Because I don't want my kids also to be technologically illiterate, right?
Yeah.
So how do we help them, balance the two?
So great question. So we have a granddaughter who's 11 and who's 6, right? And ChatGPT is real, right? And we've all heard of children going to college and writing their essays and stuff through ChatGPT. And so I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, okay, this is not going to go away. More and more AI is just going to come. So I said to Ava, who's 11 the other day, I said, look, here, and she loves to write stories. She also records on iPads. So she has an iPad, but it's to make movies. So they're using her gifted talents, and she has limited time, but she makes movies. So she's being creative with it. And it's now that she's 11, right? But she's not getting a phone anytime soon. So I said to her, look, ChatGPT is a thing that if you feed it ideas, it comes up with ideas. Let's try it, see what we think about it. So I told her, I said, whatever story that you would write, I want you to feed the ChatGPT 5 ideas and see if the story comes up. And then I want you to critique it. Do you like it? Do you not like it? What about it do you like it? Do you not like?
What would you change or whatever?
Right?
Yeah. So
now we're helping her to become comfortable with the tool, but also still engaging your brain and making her feel like I'm smarter than this and I can critique this instead of dependent on it.
Right.
So I think our reality is that these devices are not going anywhere. Children are going to grow up with it. We are going to grow old with it. The best we can do is be mindful, purposeful, and educate ourselves.
Yeah.
And not hide in a cave and say, never, never. Those days are gone. It's never coming back.
Right.
So what do we do with it so that we can have mental balance, mental well-being, physical well-being, emotional, social well-being, and no device can replace a lap, right? There's no app for a lap. So reading in your lap is so different than reading from an app. Again, I think we're designed to connect with our hearts. That's what it is. We are using devices to help us, but the human connection is where the magic happens.
Agreed, 100%. 100%. All right, last one before we go. Last one. This is a personal one, but I think a lot of parents will benefit from this. My daughter Ellie, especially Ellie, is very picky with her eating. How can I get her to eat healthier foods without giving her a complex about like what's good, what are good foods, what are bad foods? I'm very health conscious personally. I exercise, I eat healthy. I know, but I want to educate her, but I also don't want to give her a complex and make her feel like certain foods are bad and certain foods are good. And how do I get her to eat good, healthy food?
Yeah, it's such a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's not an easy pill that we could swallow and we could be all healthy for the rest of our lives. I think eating is something that we all navigate, struggle with, worry about. But I think in terms of children, the message we're sending is leaning more into the education versus anything. So teaching her about carbs and protein and fat, the basic things, right? And then teaching her, okay, have a look on your plate. Which of this is protein? Like playing a game, right? And I do that with my grandkids. Okay, so do we remember if carrots are vegetables or fruits? And what do carrots do? Like, just having a conversation as the food is being served. And then did we get our protein in today? And what was that? I think 5 and up, you can have these conversations. 5 and younger, I wouldn't have these conversations. 5 and up, introduce them to the food groups and introduce them to why this matters, because our muscle needs it, our eye needs it, our heart needs it, like the why behind it. So it's not just mom and dad say it, what in my body needs it, right? And then also being okay with if they need to have some sugar and fat. Like we can't have a childhood without the good stuff, right? The good stuff that we grew up with. But again, I think doing things as a family, having some family rituals, maybe going for a walk after dinner, because what does the brain science tell us? Or not brain science, but medical science with diabetes. When you eat, the blood sugar goes up, but you go for a walk, it comes down. So even if coming up with family rituals that after dinner, we're all going to take a walk, or we're going to go to the backyard, we're going to play, we're going to move our body for the 30 minutes. Now you're doing it as a family together. You're having fun, you're connecting, but also you're making it healthy without becoming a thing.
Right, and it can excuse maybe less if you choose to eat stuff that's less on the healthy side as far as foods go. Going out for that walk can help.
Yeah, but I think it's blood sugar, right? That's the message you're trying to teach the kids. And I would introduce this vocabulary to children, not to worry them, but to help them understand their bodies. There's some really good books on a human body that we should read to our children. There's really good books about the brain that we should read to our children. I have an Amazon link on my website that has all these books categorized in there for social emotional, for brain, and even as grown-ups, if you want to learn about the brain, educate yourself, so that there's so much we don't know about the brain. It's fascinating stuff.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll link it on the video.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was great.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome.